Awesome. Looks like we're ready to go. So, first off, welcome to the Evergreen Streamlined Person-Centered Plan and Prior Authorization webinar. For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Leslie Miska, and I joined the Office of Aging and Disability Services back in February of 2016 as the Information Services Manager. My primary role within the office is oversight and management of our electronic data systems. That includes currently EIS and futuristically for all of you folks, the Evergreen data system. Joining me on the presentation today is Walter Goodlett. He is our Evergreen project organizational change management and communication subject matter expert. And I also have Nancy Kitchen here with me. She's one of our ODES data and compliance specialists and has been an integral part of the Evergreen project, helping us all the way from requirements through some of our testing, and will be very involved in our training that's going to be coming up in December. Next slide, please, Miranda. Over the next hour, I plan to share a little bit of project background, the streamlined person-centered plan and prior authorization process, some next steps, some details for how you can stay engaged and continue to get support, and then we'll wrap up by answering any questions that you might have. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. All of the participants have been added in the listener mode, therefore your line is muted. We do ask that you, we want to hear your questions, so we do ask that you use the Q&A icon that's in your Zoom menu to submit questions throughout the presentation at any time. And then at the end, we should have about 15 minutes left, and I will respond to as many questions as I can during those 15 minutes. If there are too many questions to respond to within our hour, we will add any that we're unable to get to the list of frequently asked questions that we're working on that we will be posting to our website soon. Next slide, please, Miranda. The purpose of the Evergreen Data System project is to implement a single electronic system to replace the office's three major legacy data systems. Those include EIS, MAPSYS, and MeCare. The project is being completed in a phased approach, and this is the first phase. This phase included 3 production releases. Our very first one was back in May of 2019, and it was a really small pilot release just to manage our developmental disabilities waitlist. So we just have a couple of internal users that have been using the system since then. Then in June of 2020, we had our first major production release, and that was for our adult protective services and public guardianship conservatorship programs. And our third release is the upcoming release planned for January 16th, 2024. And that will be for all of our ODES EIS users, and that will be to manage our developmental disabilities and neurobehavioral programs. The primary goal of the project is to enhance the quality of services for our constituents. Some of the benefits that we will recognize in doing so is automation of some current paper and manual processes, reduction of some of the redundant data entry, some streamlining of some of our workflows and business processes, and improved data and reporting. Next slide, please, Miranda. Please note that during today's webinar, I will be providing a high-level overview of some of the portions of the developmental disabilities person-centered planning process, and will not be able to show every screen or field within each of the forms that we'll be talking about, nor will I be able to point out every field or feature on each of these slides. That said, there will be plenty of time for you to explore the system between now and January. Also, I'd like to remind you that access to the Evergreen system is role-based. So depending on your role, you may or may not have access to all of the person records and or forms that I'm going to be showing during today's webinar. Like other forms, the person-centered plan can be found by navigating to the person record and then clicking on the Forms Plan icon in the primary navigation on the left-hand side of the screen, which I've circled there for you. And you can see that it's white in the background because I was clicked into the Forms and Plans area when I took this screenshot. If your role includes the ability to create PCPs, you will be able to, once you click on the Forms and Plans icon, you will be on the All Forms list page, and you will have the plus Add New Form button. And you'll be able to select that and choose the person-centered plan under the case care plans and forms category. Once you do that, you'll be presented with a screen that you see here, which will ask you to choose your program, which in this example, I've chosen main care section 29, and then the PCP type. So you can see that it's only giving me the type of initial here. That is because when you create a new PCP, it will always be type initial. However, Evergreen does offer the ability to revise existing completed plans just like EIS does. And you would do that by finding the particular plan within the list page, using the ellipses, choosing the revise option, at which point then you would be able to say whether you want to do a change PCP or an annual PCP. In this example, I did select the type of initial. You can see that the system alerted me in the yellow message at the bottom of this screenshot to let me know that my person record, Leslie Test, did not have a completed comprehensive assessment record, and that completing this assessment first would save me some redundant data entry. And the system asks me whether I am sure I want to continue. If you don't want to have to capture the data twice, you can simply click the cancel button here and be navigated back to the all forms list page, where you can use the plus add new form button to create a comprehensive assessment form first, which is located under the assessments category. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon creation of the comprehensive assessment, the system will navigate you into the form. The comprehensive assessment is a new form in Evergreen, which will become part of the developmental disabilities person-centered planning process. The comprehensive assessment will replace the current BMS 99, psychosocial, and portions of the V7. The other portions of the V7 will be in the person-centered plan in Evergreen. Just like other complex Evergreen forms, you'll be defaulted to a view mode with all the sections collapsed when you first navigate into the form. You can tell that this form is in view mode because I've circled the edit mode icon in the upper left-hand corner, and it has a little gray bubble in the middle. That means that I'm in view mode. If I click that, it would turn orange, which means I'm in edit mode. You can also use the toggle icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen to open your quick scroll menu, which will reveal the sections of the form. And you can see that I clicked on that because it has a little orange bubble in the middle. The sections of this form, the comprehensive assessment, are overview, assessment information, health and wellness, home and housing, safety and security, community engagement, employment, social and relationships, lifelong learning, communication and advocacy, summary, skills and abilities definitions. You can scroll within the form to view each section, or you can click on the particular section that you'd like to be automatically navigated to in this quick scroll menu. To populate the form, you will need to click on the edit toggle in the upper left-hand content of the area and set the form into edit mode. Prior to starting your form, you may want to click on the print icon, which I've circled here. I had already clicked on it when I took this screenshot, and it opens up this additional menu for you. And you could run the exploration and discovery report, which will provide content that you might want to copy and paste into this form. If you were not able to participate in our reportable events in progress note webinar, you may want to go back and listen to that. I do discuss this report in a little bit more detail during that webinar. Once you've completed the comprehensive assessment form, you can use the BMS 99 comprehensive assessment print to print a version of the form with just the BMS 99 questions and answers if you need that and if your role offers you that print option. Next slide, please, Miranda. Once in edit mode, and you can see that I'm in edit mode because now my little edit icon has the orange bubble, you can use the quick scroll or the page arrows to move from section to section to populate the form. As highlighted in the quick scroll menu, each of the domain-based sections of the comprehensive assessment form follow the same structure. The first subsection will display any history items which were captured under that top-level domain. Then, depending on the domain that you're under, there will be 2 or 3 additional subdomains. Each of these domains are subtopics to the, in this case, health and wellness category. And each of those will display relevant content from the person record, followed by a set of custom questions for that topic area. The last section under each top-level domain is the need assessment for that domain. So in this case, the need assessment for health and wellness. This is the standard need assessment as shown in the central content area of this slide. And it has a standard set of questions, including whether there's a need identified for that domain, and if yes, a required description will be presented, as well as a multi-ad list, which allows you to enter as many individual needs as the person has related to this top-level domain. Each need that is added through this multi-ad list will display in the table format as shown at the bottom of this content area. In this example, I indicated that there was a need of free and reliable transportation to get to and from the gym on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I then added a need of transportation with a description of Monday, Wednesday, Friday to and from the gym. Next slide, please, Miranda. Underneath the need question and its multi-ad list, there are 2 more multi-ad lists for capturing as many individual strengths and or barriers that the person possesses in relation to this top-level domain. Prior to adding any records, the system will display a message that you're like what you're seeing here, that there is no strength record, or if you're in the barrier section, no barrier records available. And it will also present you with this plus add strength button, or in the barrier section, plus add barriers. This is how you add individual strengths and barriers, by clicking on this green button. Next slide, please, Miranda. In this example, I added a strength of motivated with a description of Leslie enjoys working out and is motivated to go to the gym regularly, which displays in the same table format as the need did. Please note that all of the data captured in the comprehensive assessment will be viewable from within the person-centered plan in the Exploration and Discovery Getting the Life I Want section of the person-centered plan. And any needs, strengths, and barriers that are captured in the comprehensive assessment will flow into the person-centered plan under the My Life Planning section in their respective subsection, My Needs, My Strengths, and My Barriers. This way, the case manager does not have to recapture that data and can view that data while populating the person-centered plan. Next slide, please, Miranda. Once the comprehensive assessment has been completed, you can create your person-centered plan. In this example, I've selected the program of Main Care Section 29 and the type of initial, and the system has defaulted the plan effective date range for me by setting the effective date range to today's date and the end date to the same month, day, +1 calendar year. However, these dates are editable if those need to be modified by the case manager or care coordinator. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon saving, the system will navigate you into the Person-Centered Plan tab, or PCP tab, of the PCP form. Just like the comprehensive assessment, you will be in the view mode, and you can use the toggle icon in the upper left-hand corner to set to edit mode, or you can use the toggle icon in the upper right-hand corner of the content area to open the quick scroll menu, which will reveal the sections of the person-centered plan. These are Overview, Personal Profile, Exploration and Discovery, My Meeting, My Circle of Support, My Life Planning, Rights, Supports, and Modifications, Summary of Meeting, and Summary of Plan. Please note that the Evergreen PCP matches the EIS PCP form almost exactly. There are a few slight differences. The only significant difference between the two is that Evergreen's PCP is more dynamic. For example, in the Evergreen person-centered plan, that has the ability to display content from the comprehensive assessment and from the person record. And it's more automated than the EIS version. For example, it will auto-generate service implementation plans, home and community-based settings rights modification addendums, and prior authorizations, and it will trigger notifications to the different system users, letting them know when these forms are ready to be populated and or reviewed. Both the PCP and comprehensive assessment also have an add information button, which I've circled in the center of this screenshot. This button allows the case manager or care coordinator to add history items, person contacts, or attachments directly within their respective form, rather than having to navigate a way to capture those details at the person record level. Next slide, please, Miranda. The person-centered plan has 4 workflow statuses, which include pending planning team meeting. This is the status that the form will be in once it's created and until the planning team meeting has occurred. Then the next status is pending state review. After that, pending provider selection. And then once the plan is completed, plan completed is the final workflow status. In edit mode, which you can see I'm in edit mode because I have the little orange bubble, you are able to see the subsections of the quick scroll menu. In this example, I circled the exploration and discovery section of the quick scroll menu, which has subsections of exploration and discovery person-centered thinking tools, getting the life I want, and other agenda items. In the central content area, which we're zoomed in on now, you can see that I am in the Getting the Life I Want section, which is under the health and wellness domain. If you were to click on this health and wellness header, an accordion would expand to display the health and wellness section of the most recently completed comprehensive assessment. This way, you don't have to keep navigating away from the plan to see what was captured during the assessment. Just like the person history, progress note exploration and discovery, and the comprehensive assessment, the PCP Getting the Life I Want subsection is domain based. Each domain, each of the top 8 domains has the same set of questions. There's 1 text field and 4 multi-add lists. These fields will create your goals. They'll automatically create your goals under the My Life Planning section of this person-centered plan, as well as your available selections for the dual lists of your risks in that My Life Planning section. These questions are what's important to or for me, which is the text field, and then a multi-add list for what the person wants to stay the same or maintain, another multi-add list for what the person wants to be different, add, change, or stop, and then 2 more multi-add lists for these are the risks with what I want to stay the same, and these are the risks with what I want to be different. In this example, I indicated that going to the gym was important to or for me, and what I wanted to stay the same was going to the gym Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. To continue populating the plan, you can use these page navigation buttons at the bottom of the screen here. Note, you will want to be sure to use the Save button to commit any content that you've added to this page to the database before stepping away from your computer. And you'll want to use the Save and Next button to commit any content that you've added to the page if you're not going to be stepping away and you want to keep moving forward in the plan. Only use the page arrows if you have not added any content to your page and you simply want to move forward or backward to a different page. Next slide, please, Miranda. In the essence of time today, I'm going to skip several sections of the person-centered plan and skip down to the My Life Planning section. This way I can show you how the information that we just added under the Getting the Life I Want section is pre-populating this section of the plan. In the My Life Planning section, the subsections include My Life Planning person-centered thinking tools, My Goals, My Goal Review, My Needs, my strengths, my barriers, services and supports, change and waiver services, state review, and medication review dates. In the central content area, you could see that I'm in the My Goals section, and you can see that there's a goal name of visiting the gym Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This is one of the items that I added under the Getting the Life I Wanted section up above as something that I wanted to stay the same or maintain. And it auto-created a goal with that name for me. All the rest of the fields here are empty. And what we recommend is that you review these goal names to ensure that all of your goals are there, and then drop down and start populating the services and supports subsection and move your way back up through the subsections before you populate the remaining fields of the goals. This will allow your pick lists within the goal for things like services, barriers, strengths, and needs to all be populated before you try to link those up to your goals. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon clicking on the services and supports in the quick scroll menu, you will be navigated to that page where a green multi-add list button with the label of plus add service or support will appear. I'd already clicked on that when I took this screenshot, which is why it looks a little grayed out in the background. Once you click on it, the system presents this pop-up modal that you're seeing here in the center of the screen. The first field in that modal is a pick list of services and supports types. This includes case management, community natural resources, non-waiver services, waiver services, and proposed waiver services, which should only be used when applying for a new waiver. Next slide, please, Miranda. In this example, I selected waiver service, and then I clicked on the search icon to find the service that I wanted to link to this PCP. As you can see, there's a quick keyword search or an advanced search option. Since I knew the procedure code of the service I was looking for, I typed T2021 into the quick search. However, you can also search based on service title and or description. It will search on all those keywords. The system will then return you services that match the criteria that you entered and the program of this PCP. So in this case, I have a main care section 29 PCP and I typed in T2021. So the system is returning me results that include both of those sets of criteria. Each service that it returns as a result will be delineated by a line above and below it. In this example, I circled the first service in my results list, which happened to be community membership, community only group 29. However, you can see that there were multiple options returned because T2021 is the procedure code for several services, each of those having different modifiers. To select the service that you want to link to this PCP or add to this PCP, you would click on the plus link icon that I circled next to that service. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon linking the service, you'll be navigated back to the add service or support modal, where your waiver service now displays the service that you linked under the service field. So you can see here where this is my waiver service, and then the second circle down there to the right is the service that I selected from my results list. In this example, I actually selected community membership, community only individual 29, which is T2021 UA. And you can't see the full name here. It does cut it off, but you can see it once you save the record. The system is displaying the rate unit and rate unit type for me, which happens to be 15-minute units. It also defaulted my service effective date range to match the PCP date range. However, those fields are editable if needed. It then presented my options for frequency of the service. In this case, there was only one option, which is 6 months. And that's because this particular service will be broken into 2 6-month prior authorizations in the MIMS system. And it allowed me to populate the hours per week that are being requested by the person and their planning team, which in this example, I selected 10, or I entered 10. This modal also includes fields for the description of scope, whether any portion of the service is being offered in a non-disability setting, and a text field to describe when the person will no longer want or need supports. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon saving, the service will be displayed as seen here. Please note that I intentionally left the provider field blank before I saved that modal. This is because the plan requires a state review before completing the provider selection. Next slide, please, Miranda. After entering all of the services and supports, it is recommended that you then review and edit the My Barriers and My Strengths sections. In this screenshot, you can see that the strengths of motivated and good with finances have migrated in from the comprehensive assessment. And you can tell that they came from the comprehensive assessment because it has that as the source. The case manager also has the ability, or care coordinator, also has the ability to add more strengths and or barriers directly from within the PCP in this section. So if you needed to add more strengths that had not been captured in your comprehensive assessment, you would simply scroll to the bottom of this My Strengths page, and you would find a plus add strengths button, a green button, and you would go ahead and add as many additional strengths as you needed to, and same for the barriers section. Next slide, please, Miranda. After reviewing the strengths and barriers, we recommend doing the same with the needs. Any needs captured in the comprehensive assessment will migrate into the My Needs section with a status of unmet. So you can see in this screenshot, kind of grayed out in the background, this need migrated over from the comprehensive assessment and it came in with the status of unmet. The case manager should open each need and edit that need to populate the remaining fields, which include an indication of whether this is a resource need, yes or no, and update the status to reflect whether the services and supports added in the section below would meet the need or not. So in this case, I changed the status to met because I'm requesting a service that will meet that need. And you can also see here that I circled the source of comprehensive assessment. Next slide, please, Miranda. Once all of those sections have been reviewed and completed, the case manager can then circle back to complete the remaining goal fields. In this example, I've selected the goal of visiting the gym Monday, Wednesday, and Friday so that I can finish populating that goal. I entered the desired outcome, and I can see that the system has already auto-populated the domain of health and wellness for me. That's because that is where this item, visiting the gym Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it was captured under the domain in the Getting the Life I Want section of health and wellness. However, this is editable. So if the case manager needs to edit that domain, you can certainly do so using the little checkboxes and the arrows between the dual list. Next slide, please, Miranda. The case manager then has the ability to select the corresponding strengths, barriers, risks, and needs, and services and supports that are associated with each goal. Please note that if you had attempted to populate the goal fields before completing your other subsections of the My Life planning, your dual lists may not include all the selections that you required. Next slide, please, Miranda. Once the planning team has completed all the sections required for state review, the case manager will set the plan to a status of pending state review. This will then allow the system to trigger a notification to the resource coordinators, letting them know that there is a PCP, in this case for Leslie Test, which requires state review. The logged in resource coordinator, in this example, I logged in as Sandra Resource Coordinator, will simply click on the notifications icon in their primary navigation, and then they'll be able to see that notification right at the top of their list. In this case, it was the record for Leslie Test, and they can simply click on that record and it will navigate them right into the PCP that needs review. Next slide, please, Miranda. Once in the PCP, the resource coordinator will review the plan sections, and then they'll populate the state review section of the plan, which is in this screenshot here. Just a couple of questions, yes or no, and then some comments. And then they will set the status to submit for provider selection, which is what I'm showing you here. Next slide, please, Miranda. The change in the plan status will trigger another notification to the assigned case manager. In this example, the case manager is Jesse CCM, and Jesse will use that notification icons just the same way that the resource coordinator did to navigate to the notifications, which is shown in the central content area here. And it's showing Jesse that Leslie Test's person-centered plan record is ready for provider selection. Jesse will then click on this record and it will navigate Jesse directly into that PCP to complete that portion of the person-centered planning process. Next slide, please, Miranda. Please note that the current vendor call process should still be used to identify providers if the person does not know which providers they would like to invite to submit service implementation plans. However, once the providers are known, the case manager should invite the providers to submit service implementation plans using the multi-add button under the Service Implementation Plan Provider Invitations header at the bottom of each waiver service. So that case manager would navigate into the My Life Planning section, go to Services and Supports, find the waiver service that they want to invite the provider or providers to, scroll to the bottom of that modal, and add as many providers as you would like to submit service implementation plans for this service. And you do that for each waiver service. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon clicking that plus add button, you will be presented with a provider search field, which is a little bit grayed out in the background of this screenshot at the bottom. You'll click on search, and then it will open up this modal that you're seeing more front and center at the top. From here, you can use the quick search and use keywords to search for your provider that you'd like to invite to submit the SIP, or you can use the advanced search to narrow your search results. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon selecting the provider and saving, the system will trigger a notification to that selected provider, letting them know that they have been invited to submit a service implementation plan. At this point, the provider will likely not have a assignment to that person record, so they will not necessarily have access to the person record. They will, when they click on their notification, they will be directed to the forms and plans icon under their location profile, under their staff user location. That's where they'll fill out the service implementation plan. And then once they have filled that out, it will notify the case manager care coordinator. The system will also add the SIP that's been created to the SIP tab of the PCP. So in this screenshot, you can see I circled the SIP tab because that's what I was on when I took the screenshot. And you can see there's a row here in the table. And that is, in this example, I invited one provider to submit a SIP for a single service. And that was that I invited CCM Works to submit a SIP for community membership, community only individual 29 on November 8th. And the SIP is in progress because the provider has not yet completed it for my review. However, if you invited multiple providers, you would see multiple rows here. If there were multiple services that you were inviting different providers for, you'd see all those separate rows as the case manager care coordinator. Next slide, please, Miranda. As the case manager, or care coordinator, you can click into that row and it will open the SIP form from within the SIP tab so that you can see all sections of the SIP. As you can see here, it has a similar structure and navigation as the PCP. The user can click on the toggle icon in the upper right-hand corner to see all sections of the SIP, which happen to be SIP template, goal and service details, which these sections are auto-populated by the system, and they're portions of the PCP that are displayed for this waiver provider so they know how to fill out their plan. They'll see the goal related details that they need in order to service and goal related details that they need in order to fill out their SIP. And then the third section is the service implementation plan, or SIP details. This is the section that will be populated by the provider. Once the provider has populated all the SIP details, they will set the status to submit for SIP review. This will trigger a notification to the assigned case manager or care coordinator, who will then review and approve the submitted SIPs with the person. Please note that I'm not going to go any further into the SIP during this webinar. However, providers will have the opportunity to participate in relevant role-based trainings that will discuss the SIP in December. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon approval of a SIP, the case manager will then navigate back to the My Life Planning services and support section and find the waiver service in that section and populate that empty provider field, the one that we intentionally left blank, with the selected provider, and then you'll hit save. Next slide, please, Miranda. After all of the waiver services have been updated to reflect the selected providers, the case manager will complete the remaining sections of the plan, including some of the required fields like the SIP survey and capturing of signatures. And then the case manager or care coordinator will use the status dropdown, which I've circled here, to set the status to complete plan. This will allow the system to trigger the auto generation of the prior authorizations and notification to the resource coordinators that those prior authorizations have been created and are ready for their review and authorization. And it will auto assign all of the selected waiver providers to the person's record so that they can have access to that record. Next slide, please, Miranda. In Evergreen, the prior authorizations are considered a form, and they can be located by navigating to the All Forms list page under the Forms Plans icon in the person record. In this screenshot, you can see a new prior authorization at the top of the form, and this has some generic details, including the form ID, the program for which this prior authorization was created, the create date and the created by, and a few other generic fields. Next slide, please, Miranda. By using the filter icon, which is in the upper right-hand corner, that upside down pyramid or hamburger looking icon, you can navigate to the custom prior authorization list page, which is what I was on when I took this screenshot. This list page provides some more granular details for the PA, like the PA number, the provider's name, the provider's NPI +3, the service name, the procedure code and all of its modifiers, and the start and end dates for this particular PA. So it's just a little bit more information. It makes it a little bit easier for you to find the particular prior authorization that you're looking for. You can, however, open the prior authorization from either list page, the one that's the All Forms list page or this list page, by clicking on the row that you'd like to navigate into. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon system creation, the prior authorization will be in a status of in progress with a source of person-centered plan if it was auto-generated off the person-centered plan. Please note that resource coordinators and care monitors have the ability to create prior authorizations directly from the All Forms or custom prior authorization list page using that plus add form button if that's necessary. However, prior authorizations should generally be auto-created by the system from the completed PCPs. The sections of the PA form include overview, provider information, original request, and service information. The first three sections will be auto-populated by the system if the PA was generated off the PCP. And then the only section that would need to be reviewed and completed by the resource coordinator would be the service information section. Next slide, please, Miranda. Upon selecting a service line from the service information section, the resource coordinator will be navigated to the service details page, which will be in a status of pending review. The requested service details will be displayed from the PCP on the left-hand column of this dual list. And the resource coordinator will use that little arrow in the center that's right-hand facing, or caret, to copy those details into the authorized service fields. Once they're copied over there, the resource coordinator has the ability to make any necessary edits in the authorized service fields before completing that and finishing this page with the decision information. Please note that I'm not going to discuss the remaining portions of the prior authorization during this webinar. However, resource coordinators and care monitors will have the ability to participate in role-based training around the prior authorization in December. Next slide, please, Miranda. So what's next? Please continue to read our email communications, which will be sent out after each webinar series. We also intend to send additional communications reminding you of the trainings in December, and then another one reminding you of the upcoming deploy in January. Please continue to work on cleaning your EIS data up to ensure the most successful migration possible. You can find details about that in our September 25th email with the subject of update on Evergreen Release 3 rollout, and that has also been posted to our project website if you didn't receive it by email. And please register for your role-based training topic or topics when those registration links are available. Some of the registration links have already been posted to our project website, but there are still several that have not been added yet and will be added throughout the week. And we will send an email once all of the registration links have been posted. Next slide, please, Miranda. So how can you stay engaged and get additional support? Please continue to leverage your change champion. There is a list of change champions out on our project website and a little bit more information about what the change champions are or what they're helping to do by assisting with the transition to Evergreen at the grassroots level. Please make sure you read all of our email communications, and because they're coming out by email, please make sure that your email address is correct in the EIS system. And if it's not, please use our eissupport.dhhs@maine.gov email address to get that updated. If you have any questions or feedback, or you'd just like to reach out to us as the project team, you can do so at evergreen.dhhs@maine.gov. That email box is now being monitored by Nancy Kitchen, and we're trying to respond to questions that are coming in there a bit more timely. And any questions that are coming in through there, we're also adding to our frequently asked questions list so that everybody can see the responses. And for links to all of our project communications, recorded webinars, and very soon our frequently asked questions, please visit our project website at maine.gov/dhhs/EIS/evergreen. Next slide, please, Miranda. So we've made it to the question and answer portion of today's webinar. And I do have some questions already in the Q&A right now that I'll respond to. If you have any questions, please feel free to type them in now, and we'll answer as many of those as we can in our last 15 to 16 minutes together. Francine asks, what does the state review status mean in the PCP? Great question, Francine. So it's my understanding that state review is occurring for some person-centered plans right now, but not all person-centered plans. So I think this will be a business process shift when you get to Evergreen, where all person-centered plans will require a resource coordinator review after the team meeting and before provider selection. So there will be some business process training, I believe, around the person-centered plan, comprehensive assessment person-centered plan process later in December or early January, where more of those details will be discussed with you. Lisa asks, can you edit the text in the sections after it's been saved? Great question, Lisa. So while the person-centered plan any form, actually, comprehensive assessment or person-centered plan, but particularly the person-centered plan, while those are in an in-progress state, while they're not in a completed state, those fields are still editable. Once the form has been set to completed, you would need to use the revise feature in order to edit the content within a field. Cynthia asks, will folks be creating service implementation plans have the permissions allowing to print the entire PCP? Great question, Cynthia. No, the provider users who are filling out the SIPs will not have access to view the full PCP or use the full PCP print option. They will, however, be able to see the SIP, which will display for them the sections of the person-centered plan that are required in order for them to populate their SIP. And they will have a SIP print feature, which will allow them to print the SIP. Someone else asks, is there going to be Terry Duck in Evergreen for us to be able to practice like there is in EIS? Great question. We actually did attempt to remove all of our test records from our production environment because test records should not be mingled with production data. It does mess up our reporting if we don't if we inadvertently keep those records in there. However, Terry Duck does currently exist in our production Evergreen environment and may still exist once we go live with release 3. I think we're trying again to remove Terry Duck, but because Terry already exists in Evergreen production, that record may still persist there. That said, as far as kind of testing around goes, all users will be given access to a sandbox or training environment prior to our deploy. Sometime in December, after you've received your technical training, you'll be given access to that sandbox environment that you can test around in prior to the deploy. And that environment will stay live for a short period of time after we go live in Evergreen, I think through the end of February. So you'll have it still available for some additional practice for a short period of time. And then all of the training sessions, technical, business process, all of these webinars, everything is being recorded so that you can go back to those as many times as you need to refresh yourself on different areas of the system. Stacy asks, will the timeline timeframes for getting the PCP to be completed change due to needing the state approval? Great question, Stacy. I actually do not know the answer to that. That question was asked at the end of the day yesterday as well on our webinar. We will get some more information around that from our business unit, and we'll post some additional information related to that in our frequently asked questions. Sarah asks, does OATS require us to have the entire PCP as part of our record? Or indicates OATS requires us to have the entire PCP as part of our records. How are we to do that if we can't print the PCP? So this is related to a waiver provider. I believe, Sarah, that the details that you are required to have are part of that service implementation plan. But we'll certainly take that back to our business unit as well to confirm that you will have everything that you need in the service implementation plan. Linda asks, so the provider will not be able to see the entire plan prior to writing the SIP. So again, related to the providers and the service implementation plan. Yeah, so again, it's my understanding, and I don't want to, I'm not probably the right authority to respond to this, but it's my understanding that providers will be given all of the portions of the person-centered plan that are necessary in order to be able to populate a service implementation plan, and all of the details of the plan that you should be able to see per our waiver rules and business process. Lisa asks, will there be some kind of how-to manual developed for Evergreen? Great question, Lisa. Yes. So there will be a user guide that is still being refined. It does give information, how to technically navigate the system and find the different areas of the system and how to create records, edit records, that kind of thing. That is being produced by our vendor, FEI Systems. It's still being worked on and refined and revised, and will be available for users before we go live. So you will get access to that. It will also be available once you log into the Evergreen system from our help center. So in Evergreen, there's a help icon. Every user has access to that. It's in the upper right-hand corner of Evergreen. And when you go to the help center, you'll be able to find that user guide in there. You'll also be able to find in there little short micro learning videos. These will be part of your training. So all users will receive a series of, I think, 7 or 8 micro learning videos. They're about 3-minute clips that give you how to do some of the primary tasks, like search for a person, how to add a progress note, some of those things. So you'll also find those videos in that help center. And you'll also find some additional business process documentation. So some of our business unit folks are actively working to identify some of our existing manuals, like the person-centered planning manual, and some of our other documentation. We have some desk level type procedures for like discharging a person, some of those types of documents, and we're updating those. We're working to get those updated in advance of our release to reflect Evergreen versus what they currently reflect EIS. So all of those will also be available for you from within that help center, and all of the materials will also be posted out on our website as well. So if you're locked out of the system and you need to gain access to some of those materials, you can. Donald asks, if providers are not allowed to print the PCP, how will they get the signature sheet that is needed for compliance? So the signatures for the SIP will be captured on the person-centered plan by the case manager care coordinator. That will not be the responsibility of the provider to capture those signatures. Michaela asks, it looked like the start and end dates were the same day, 11/6/23 and 11/6/24, rather than the end date being 11/5/24. Is this how it will be set up in Evergreen? Yes, Michaela. Unfortunately, it was explained to me during our requirements process that the plan year and the classification for the person was the month, day, and then the 2 distinct years. So we've set it to auto default that way. However, you can modify that end date to backdate it a day if that's necessary. I think some more information will be shared around that at one of the business process trainings as well in the December-January timeframe. That session around comprehensive assessment and prior author PCP will likely give some additional details about that. Lisa asks, will there be guidance for what we need to do if someone is in the middle of annual planning and Evergreen goes live in the midst of that process? Great question, Lisa. So the data in EIS is being migrated into Evergreen. So our migration will start on Friday, January 12th at 5 p.m. So at 5 p.m., we will set EIS into a read-only mode. And then we will begin our 3-day process of migrating all of the content that's in EIS into Evergreen and confirming that all of the functionality works and all that. And then on Tuesday morning, January 16th at 8 a.m., the system will be available for all users to use, and your data will be migrated over there. If you have a person-centered plan that was in process in EIS, it was not in a completed state, it will migrate over in its in-process status. So whatever details had been captured will be migrated over into their respective Evergreen fields. And then you'll be able to finish the plan in Evergreen and set it into whatever future statuses it needs. I'll also share a question was asked on one of our previous webinars about the comprehensive assessment and whether that would be populated with data in Evergreen. The answer to that is no. So because the existing forms, the BMS 99, psychosocial, and V7 are quite different than the comprehensive assessment, we weren't able to successfully migrate that data into a comprehensive assessment. So none of your users will have a comprehensive assessment in Evergreen. However, we wanted you to have access to the BMS 99, psychosocial, and V7 data in Evergreen. So we are migrating that data as uploaded attachments to the person record. So you will be able to find the BMS 99, psychosocial, and V7 data, but you won't have a comprehensive assessment that exists. You will not be required to immediately create a comprehensive assessment for your users. Comprehensive assessments are minimally required at time of somebody coming in new to services. So if it's a brand new person that just came through intake and eligibility, then a comprehensive assessment should be done preceding their person-centered plan. And then again, minimally every time you do their annual plan. So once in Evergreen, and as you are preparing to do an annual plan for a person, you should do your first comprehensive assessment for that person. That comprehensive assessment will be an initial comprehensive assessment because they don't have one in the system yet. And that will precede your annual plan for that person. And then that's how you'll get into the cycle of doing the comprehensive assessment each year. Now, the only other time that a comprehensive assessment should be completed is if a person has a significant change. So if there's a change in need, a change in way for service or services, or they have a major life change, like they change residence, then you would want to also at that time do a comprehensive assessment prior to your change type PCP. There's also a question about whether you'll receive a certificate for this webinar. No, there will be no certificates for this webinar or for your trainings per se. I can definitely take that back and discuss that with business unit and see if there has been certificates provided for our system trainings in the past. Lisa asks, so EIS and Evergreen will not be available on Monday, January 15th. That is correct, Lisa. Monday, January 15th is a holiday. So the state offices will be closed on that day, and likely a lot of your organizations will also observe that holiday. However, if you're not observing that holiday, the system will be unavailable on that Monday. So you would need to, if you are working, you would need to capture your data outside of the system and then populate it on Tuesday morning into the system. Troy asks, I am not sure if you mentioned this, but how long will we be given to learn the system before it's required for us to use it? Excellent question, Troy. So some of the technical training sessions will start as early as December 4th. So you'll be receiving training, depending on your role, anytime between December 4th and early to mid-January. And then once technical training sessions have occurred in December, we will provide users with access to that sandbox environment. We don't have a set date yet for when you'll gain access to the sandbox environment. I'm still discussing that with our vendor, FEI, but I'll certainly share that date with people once that is settled on and known. But you'll definitely have several weeks in that sandbox environment to familiarize yourself with the system prior to the deploy on January 16th. Linda asks, will the comprehensive assessment need to be completed if the PCP is in process prior to Evergreen? The PCP meeting may have occurred already. Yeah, good question, Linda. So if you are in process in EIS for an annual plan, you won't necessarily need to complete the comprehensive assessment in Evergreen if you've already, gotten the plan to a state for which it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to go back and do the comprehensive assessment. However, you certainly can create the comprehensive assessment if you want to. There's nothing that would prevent you from doing that. I'm sure we could take that question back as well, and incorporate that into that business process training around the comprehensive assessment and person-centered plan as well. Nancy, maybe you could jot that question down to take to our next meeting. So it is 9:01, and I do want to be respectful of everybody's time. And I actually have a meeting that I need to get to as well. I want to thank everyone for joining us. These were some really great questions. We did get through the questions that were in the chat. If anybody thinks of any additional questions, please feel free to send those to our evergreen.dhhs@maine.gov email address. We would be happy to respond to those. And if you have any colleagues that have not yet participated in this webinar, please encourage them to come to the session at noon today. That will be our last session for this topic. And then we will post all the recordings for this out on our project website, along with the recordings from sessions 1 and 2. So if you didn't get to participate in those, please definitely go back and listen. And thank you again for joining us so bright and early. It was very nice being able to demo this for you, and we look forward to training with you in December. Everybody have a great day.
Great job, Leslie.